Hello, everyone. I'm Jackie Ray, and I'm from the Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility in the Training and Organizational Development Division, and I'm here to introduce our Terms and Definitions document. I also have with me some of my colleagues from the office, and they're going to help introduce some of the segments during this introduction. In introducing our terms and definitions, we want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of the terms and definitions that we are using in any training or speaking engagements that we may have. How could these terms create chaos and misunderstanding?
I wouldn't say that they would create chaos per se, but I would note that we created it so that we can have some level of grounding with DEIA terms. This will allow us to think and speak about these terms in the same fashion.
I agree, Toya. These terms allow us to provide a shared meaning and a continuity of understanding. In addition, as we are providing DEIA training, participants will be able to go back to this document and they'll be able to look at it. They'll be able to learn from it. They'll be able to use it as a reference tool, which is really great.
It also helps us with our communication, respectful communication in the workplace.
I appreciate that you said that, Dr. Robinson, because as we know, doing DEIA work, we don't all have shared agreement. Our goal is really to make sure that there is shared understanding and shared meaning among these DEIA terms.
Yeah, Montez and Toya, how you mentioned that we're going to be building this shared language, this shared communication, that as DEIA professionals, we're going to be learning as well. And so as we're learning, like Jackie had mentioned, this is a living document that will be continued to be updated, and then we'll be able to share out this document to the workforce.
And you mentioned evolving and evolution. How would you all say that words have evolved over time?
Oh, wow. There has been so many new terms that have come up within the last 20, 30 years that we weren't using. Selfie is one of the terms that comes to mind. In the DEIA space, BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, is a new term that evolved from the term minorities. Minorities was a term that in many spaces was considered negative because it said that people were inferior or less than. But being able to give an identity and give humanity by using the BIPOC term allows individuals to be empowered.
I like that you mentioned that, Montez, because as we do this DEIA work, a group that comes to mind for me where terms have evolved significantly are around people with disabilities. How often in the past have we noted handicap? We still see it in places, we still hear those terms. However, things have evolved and we refer to people with disabilities as people with disabilities. And that piece becomes really important because, as you mentioned, it humanizes people. And also, as it relates to terms that are in and out, we talk about being respectful of other groups. So just think about how often you'll hear someone say that someone is crazy or that someone is driving like a maniac. Just being mindful of the terms that we're using and how we're using them and how these terms may have an impact on people can really help us to maintain that level of dignity and respect that Dr. Lillian brought into the conversation.
A word that comes to my mind is colored. When you think about that word colored, I can remember growing up and hearing that word, and it was a negative word. But Montez, you were talking about people of color. So think about people of color and the word colored and how we use those words today.
Dr. Lillian, you raised a very good point with the terms that you brought up, colored and people of color, because those two can be taken as synonymous terms and they're very different things. So having a glossary can help to alleviate the confusion that can come with these terms that feel like they may be closely aligned, but one may be derogatory and the other may actually have a place in today's conversation. So that was a good point.
Yeah. And speaking to evolution of terms, there, like Montez had said about empowerment, there are communities that have reclaimed and even embraced terms that were used as derogatory, but are now celebrated within the community, such as queer. That is a very embraced term within the LGBTQ community.
And I appreciate hearing what you've said, Montez, as well as you, Dr. Donlin, because at the end of the day, having a listing of terms and definitions will help us to have these kinds of conversations that Dr. Lillian mentioned, respectful conversations, because it's really not about our intent. It's about the impact that is created based on the things that we say and the things that we do.
I want to take this time right now to thank you all for helping me and discussing the terms and definitions, and our document that we're going to be presenting can be found on the Office of DEIA SharePoint site.